from Charleston.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I've been sitting here listening to a budget debate. Here we are in January. I'm not on finance, but we're having a budget debate. Now, there was a motion made earlier to rule many of these amendments out of order. If you read the bill, in my view, many of these amendments are not a natural extension of the bill. Now, I hadn't been here long. I joined this body in 2014. But we spending money. We spending money in January. We got an amendment to pay down the unfunded liability of the retirement system. Nowhere in the discussion was there a mention of the actual unfunded liability. We got other amendments that seek to spend, and I submit the figure is over $48 million. We know that Amazon has cheated the state of South Carolina, arguably not paid the state of South Carolina, and I'll strike cheated because there is a legal argument that they have, untold sums of millions of dollars. And here we got a bill that would bring clarity to retailers that reside in the state of South Carolina to make them pay their fair share. Now, I know a little bit about something about this. If you go back to, I believe it was 2004, Bernie Maybank, the tax guru of South Carolina, and I'm not on his payroll, but he's a lawyer at Nexon Pruitt. He sat on the Track Commission. And at that time, the Track Commission determined that South Carolina was not in compliance with many other states who were collecting sales tax from internet retailers. So as I'm told, the story is told that Amazon moves to South Carolina. They set up a store, but we pass a bill which exempts them from paying sales tax on the merchandise that they sell. But guess what? The people who crafted that legislation, Senator from Clarington, they sunset that exemption from sales taxes till 2016. So we find ourselves in 2018 still arguing, as the DOR purports in its papers, that they still owe us money. And what the bill simply does, and I know about it because I helped draft the language to it along with many other senators, is clarify prospectively so we won't be back in this problem. Now, here's who we hurt. Here's who we hurt by not passing this bill. We drive every day past closed stores, the mom and pops of the world, and even the larger stores. All of these stores are going out of business on Main Street, USA. Why? Because people are going to the internet to shop. And guess what? they were doing that in an attempt to avoid paying sales taxes. So the issue is really twofold in my view. Number one, a retailer who has a store, a brick and mortar store, ought to be similarly situated with all other brick and mortar stores, because guess what? The other brick and mortar stores are collecting sales tax, and it's not fair for the people and the stores who are collecting it to have one retailer not thumbing the nose at our tax laws. I have to say that I'm amazed, and I hope that the teachers in the lobby looked at that vote. I have to say that there's been a great discussion today in January about spending money. Now, we have not calculated the cost to the state of South Carolina that it's going to cost us to increase teacher pay. But now we're going to spend this money on an unfunded liability that no one has talked about. Thanks to the senator from Lexington, we got another amendment to direct it to teacher pay. But we've spent the whole day trying to spend money in an effort not to pay our teachers. And now, I don't know how many amendments on the desk, but now we got other amendments to direct this revenue elsewhere.
Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, for what purpose do you rise?
We'll see if the senator from Charleston will yield for a question.
Senator yield for a question.
I yield.
Senator from Spartanburg. Senator yields for a question.
Thank you, Senator from Charleston. Senator, based on all this conversation, do you think it might be best if we went back to an original version of this bill? Is that what you're saying?
You know, I don't know how you undo what's been done, but there is some discussion about killing the bill.
Well, Senator.
Senator, if we kill this bill, this state is so far behind in its tax code. You know, let me just answer your question. In 2014, we passed what Wayfair did this summer. We passed that bill, sent it to the House. It amazes me that the bill was only 2 pages, but they failed to comprehend the impact of revenue, something our sister states, Georgia and North Carolina, are doing. So we've missed out since 2014 on millions of dollars in revenue with Wayfair. We could have paid those teachers in 2014. And now we get a clean bill. And the First Amendment is to give a rebate to the taxpayers. When we haven't had funding from, do you realize we are at 2008 mental health funding levels?
I do.
We are a decade after the recession. We are just now returning to the level we were at 2008 for the Department of Mental Health. So the First Amendment to the bill is to give the money all the way to rich folk. So I agree with, I think you agree with, I don't know if you agree with what you've said, but it should be a clean bill. The First Amendment we passed goes to the unfunded liability, and then to the wisdom of the senator from Lexington, now it goes to teachers. Seems to me that's a direct contradiction in and of itself. If we had just passed a clean bill, then that is in the province of the Senate Budget Committee and House Ways and Means to determine what our needs are.
And Senator, that was my point. If this bill is clean, the funds go into the general fund, of which we will appropriate the teacher pay increases. We will appropriate to shore up the pension system and a lot of other things. Are we in agreement on that? Is that
the Ways and Means and the Senate Finance could, what they do every year, probably starting in, April, is they look at the priorities of the state, including teacher pay, and they they allocate the resources to those areas that we need. And what would that encompass? That would encompass state employees' pay raises. That would encompass that they desperately need teacher pay, mental health, the Department of Social Services. But here we are, Senator from Spartanburg in January, spending money in a budget debate on the marketplace facilitator definition. That's essentially what it amounts to. So I don't know how we got off course, and maybe it was the artful colloquy by our senator from York. And I said colloquy because I thought he was talking to himself. But maybe it was his, I think he should have been a lawyer, but maybe it was his gift of gab, which captured our attention to talk about the state rebate. And look.
I'm going to let him stand up now.
Senator from York, for what purpose do you rise?
To see if the senator from Charleston would yield for a question.
The senator will yield for a question.
I yield.
Senator yields for a question.
Well, Senator number one, I resemble that remark. And then number two, were you aware, Senator, about this time last Thursday, we engaged in a little back and forth, and it was sort of left in the air, or folks pushed back on me, were you aware, when I raised the point that I think this legislation here will result in new revenue coming into the state. And I'm just glad to see that we've been able to clear the air. There's revenue coming in, and now we're talking about how it's going to be used. So I'd say we've at least advanced the ball closer to what is the practical and realistic effect of this piece of legislation, that it will result in new revenue for the government in a year when we have a $1 billion surplus. Isn't that correct, Senator?
It will result in revenue, but if the people and the companies were reading our state tax code, it shouldn't be new revenue. That's the point. These are legally owed obligations under current state law. And so we've allowed companies to operate in South Carolina, including Amazon, without paying their fair share. All the bill does is seek to clean up the definition so there can be no arguments as to who is a marketplace facilitator. It can't get any clearer than what's in the current bill. And so while it will be new revenue, it should not be. And that's the point of it. So I didn't get up here to filibuster the bill. I think it's a good piece of legislation. But I am just amazed at what this discussion has turned into. We all agreed before we left last week.
Senator from Clarendon, for what purpose do you rise?
Marketplace facilitator.
I'd like to see if the senator from Charleston will yield for a few questions.
Senator yield for a question from Senator from Clarendon. Senator from Charleston.
I yield.
Senator from Charleston yields for a question.
Thank you, Senator. Did you know that I agree with you? This cannot be classified as new money and money that we should have been collecting at the same time, right?
Correct.
This is like if you go back and audit a taxpayer or audit an organization and find out that they had been underpaying over the years, and you go back and collect it. Would you agree with me? That's not new money. It's money that should have been being paid all along by the taxpayer, right?
Right.
Now, would you agree with me that over the years since you and I have been here, and I've been here a little longer than you have, we have been presented with a number of legitimate needs in state government, like education and teacher pay and state employee pay and crumbling state agency buildings and crumbling buildings on our colleges and campuses. And would you agree that over the years we have told these folks over and over again that although they have legitimate needs, there's no money?
Right.
Right? So then how do we get to the point now when we have money to address those needs that many of us have agreed over the years are legitimate, and rather than address those needs, we want to give the money back? Do you think that's good policy?
I don't think it's good policy. And Senator, you used to work in the Department of Revenue, so you have a unique expertise in what you're talking about.
Yes, and not only that, but being a 30-year employee, I would tell you that probably over half of my years of service we have gone without a pay increase because, again, there was no money. So now we're going to have money that we should have been getting over the years, not new money, and we're going to tell folks rather than address these needs. You made a good point with the Department of Mental Health. There's a lot of folks that walk around on our streets, you know, that need those services, but they could not receive them because the money wasn't there. So now we have,
and that amendment we just passed, in my view, was very dangerous because now what we've done is let's just say, I don't know what the pleadings. I have not read the pleadings from the Department of Revenue, but hypothetically, let's say that the litigation will yield $200 million. Hypothetically, is that correct? You accept my hypothetical?
I accept that.
And so now we got $200 million from the litigation that we could use for teacher pay, now going to an unfunded liability that we don't even know about.
Right. And I'm going to end with this because...
Yes. Senator from Charleston, there is objection on the bill.
Excuse me?
There's an objection on the bill now at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President.